Guillermo,
Mark,
what's up, brother?
good to see you, buddy. How you
Hey,
been?
man, we're on YouTube.
It was just a matter of time.
It was just a matter of time. Well, listen, if you're watching us on YouTube or if you're listening on Spotify, we will still be available Spotify and iTunes podcasts or Apple Podcasts, whatever it is. But now you can find us on YouTube at What's on Your Mind Show for every weekly release. So on that note, Guillermo, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind today is a very apropos titled show, because it's actually the same title of our message, which is about owning your life. So I want to talk to you about the concept of ownership. What does it actually mean to be an owner? The concept of ownership. What do you own? What don't you own? And how does this actually play into owning your life?
Sure. Well, I think that's a great way to kick off this YouTube campaign is really get into the meat and potatoes, the guts, if you will, of what we're after here, the message we're trying to extend to as many people as we can possibly reach. This whole idea of self-ownership, and I think it's a good place to start. Will, and you kind of mentioned it, you alluded to it, of what ownership isn't, right? And I think it kind of can be confused because it doesn't mean you have control over everything that happens to you. You know, it's not like we're not deifying ourselves by saying I have ownership over my life. We're not sitting on the throne of destiny. You know, we're not
You're right.
trying to make ourselves into like godlike creatures, you know? But it just means taking responsibility for how you respond to what happens to you and being a good steward of your mind, of your body, of your attention, just how you conduct yourself throughout your life.
Well
And I think
said.
that's sort of the essence of ownership.
Well said. And again, you use the word responsibility because I think that responsibility and ownership, without a doubt, are cousin words of each other. And there are certain things that you're responsible for and then other things that you're not responsible for. Like you're not responsible for your past or maybe bad things that have happened to you, but you're definitely responsible for how you're going to move going forward. And, responsibility is a reaction, as it were. If you actually look at the Latin root of it, respondere, it actually means to respond or to answer to or to promise in return. So if you've been given this life, it's like it's your responsibility to respond to whatever, again, without getting into kind of the spirituality thing of whoever made you. But if you're an owner, you have a responsibility to respond to life with, well, you're going to respond one way or another. You're going to respond with an attitude of a person who thinks and acts like an owner, or, well, let's have some really fun here. What's the opposite of an owner?
Well, that's an interesting question. A tenant, perhaps?
I can think of an even worse word than that.
Go for it.
Slave.
Ooh.
Have you ever
This
thought
got
about
deep quick, bro.
Yeah,
No, I never
well,
really
come on,
have
man.
thought of it.
It's me. I mean, think about it. Listen, I'm a hyperbolic person and I use hyperbole as a coaching and teaching tool.
Well, it's a tool. Yeah, exactly.
It's a tool to be at an extreme, right?
It's like metaphor.
It's exactly. I'm a storyteller, so I can't help it. So it's like, okay, so you're a slave. Imagine just saying that to somebody, because I have, where I'm like, that's it. You're a slave. You have no ownership. You have no agency. You have a chain around you. You literally have no control over your day, your destiny, your freedom. So yeah, you're a slave. And you say that to somebody and you do it in a facetious way. Why? Why
People
am I
aren't
doing
going to
that?
like hearing that. Yeah.
100%.
Well, you use the word freedom. And I when we first launched OYL Media, the first blog that was released was about the 4 pillars of self-ownership, right? Responsibility, discipline, which I think is the precondition for freedom, right? Freedom flows downstream from discipline, right? And we've talked about freedom before, the distinction between freedom and rules and how rules can sort of engender a sense of freedom. Because in the absence of discipline, in the absence of rules, we're really just a slave to anywhere the wind blows. We're a slave to our circumstance. And that is the complete absence of ownership.
Absolutely. And again, I want to keep harping on this idea of responsibility. You and I are both huge fans of Viktor Frankl and his movement of logotherapy and man's search for meaning, Holocaust survivor, for people who just want to Google his amazing work and his amazing philosophy and his amazing life. He goes, you Americans have your Statue of Liberty, but you know what you also need? A statue of responsibility.
Ooh.
I thought that's what we were missing. And when I was thinking about this earlier, this idea of responsibility, where it's like if everybody's just free and
Mhm.
everybody is walking around with no sense of responsibility to themselves or to others or to society as all, it's actually would be kind of chaotic.
Sure.
And so this idea of being responsible, having a sense of ownership, because with great freedom comes,
Great responsibility. Right.
come on, Spider-Man, right?
Thanks, Spider-Man. Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Spider-Man. And
And so
that's really, again, because we have to use these words over and over for people to see which word lands, right? Where if you don't
yeah.
like the sense of ownership, then how about a sense of responsibility? If you don't like the sense of responsibility, then maybe you say, great, then you're just a slave and you want other people to own you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's really good because so the 4 pillars of self-ownership, right? Responsibility, discipline, but also accountability and self-awareness. And I think honestly, Will, and I was thinking about this before, trying to kind of figure out and reverse engineer, and you tell me what your thoughts are, what the most fundamental of those 4 tenets are. And I kept coming back to self-awareness. And I think additionally, people like the concept of self-awareness maybe more so than the other 3, responsibility, discipline, and accountability. People are less likely to recoil at the idea of self-awareness the way they recoil to the ideal idea of discipline or responsibility and accountability. And to Mr. Frankel's point about we need a statue of responsibility, well, we want the joy and the freedom of liberty, but we don't want to pay the cost of responsibility or
Hmm.
discipline for that matter, pain of regret. I think that's a Bill Belichick quote. Those 3, accountability, discipline, and responsibility, I think are more likely to engender this response that self-awareness is not. And so what are your thoughts? Would you categorize it similarly where self-awareness might be the means of channeling or getting into people this idea that like you can have this
It,
self-ownership?
I couldn't agree with you more. I agree with so much between therapy and coaching, which we both believe are, cousins of each other, and
Yeah.
we both come to the same family barbecue.
Right, right.
You bring the chicken, I bring the potato salad, whatever, right? We're all family.
Sure.
We're here to help. Everything starts with awareness. And awareness is, again, using language, is another word for consciousness, right?
Mhm.
And people have different levels of consciousness. People have different levels of awareness. People have different levels of maturity. People have different ability to stop and think and to react. And that's really what awareness or consciousness is. This is my kind of a personal opinion. And again, a lot of roads lead back to Viktor Frankl for us because he also has one of my favorite quotes, which is between stimulus and response, there's a space.
There's
And in that
space.
space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah.
And I think when you become more self aware, I think that's when you create some space
Right.
and you kind of say things like, okay, what do I own? What don't I own? What is truly a place where I could be blaming others versus taking some accountability for myself? And then how do I move forward and not a knee jerk now I'll use some therapy words or some Freudian words in an unconscious
Mhm.
way. I think self-awareness is about being conscious
Yeah.
first and foremost.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, there's a natural proclivity people have towards victimhood, towards outsourcing responsibility that is the diametrically opposed point of view of what we're trying to engender in folks through this Own Your Life movement. But there's just an ease that comes with, jettisoning and outsourcing any sense of responsibility because essentially what it implies is that I don't have to change. I don't have to grow. I don't have to adapt because adaptation is hard. People gravitate towards comfort. And as crazy as it might sound, people find comfort in slavery or victimhood. Do you remember
Uh-huh.
you saw Shawshank Redemption, right?
Mhm.
Great flick. Brooks, I think Brooks was the character. He'd been in Shawshank for a lifetime. And then he's this older man, he's probably in his 70s, and he's released. And what does he do when he gets to the hotel after he's released?
You
He
can
does
say
the
it.
he does the
Yeah.
unthinkable. He takes a rope and ties a knot, and that's the end of Brooks, writes a little note, Brooks was here, right? So in the absence of when given this freedom, right, it's overwhelming for Brooks.
And the reason why, if I may, is because he believes he's not strong enough. He's
Okay.
not strong enough to make his own decisions, to be his own man. This is stuff that I deal with all the time in the corporate world regarding people jettisoning from the corporate world to go be entrepreneurs or to be small business owners. They enjoy the binky that
Mm,
is salary, paycheck every 2 weeks,
safe.
benefits. It's safe. And like, who
Yeah.
could blame a person too, especially, and can I also be kind to people for a moment? If you decide to be a government employee or a corporate person, that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that
No.
it's giving you some stability and safety and maybe like being part of a team. And there's
Sure.
absolutely nothing wrong with that. But having said that, if you want to be an owner, like
Right.
quite literally like a small business owner, for instance, the buck stops here. No
Yeah.
one's coming to your rescue, but good news, if you believe that you're strong enough, then you can save yourself.
Mhm.
I love that movie Alive very much about the soccer team that crashes in the Andes.
In the Andes, right, right, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful
Never
movie
saw
for
it.
anyone who hasn't seen it. But a soccer team crashes in the Andes and are stranded for months, and they actually save themselves. They a couple of members of the party walk out through the mountains and actually they kind of rescue themselves. And there's this beautiful scene when one of the men just says, "I'm thrilled. I'm basically thrilled that." They climbed to the top of a mountain and realized there was just more mountains in every direction. And he's like, "Good news, we're going to save ourselves." Like, I'm proud to be a
Wow.
man today. I'm going to walk out. And it's really just an attitude.
Yeah.
It's an attitude because that's behind door number one. Behind door number two is I need to sit here and freeze and wait for someone to rescue me.
Right, right.
That's not an
And
ownership
pray
mentality.
that someone does. There's an Ignatius Loyola quote, "Pray as if God is in control of everything, but work as if you are in control of everything." Right? And there's that distinction. There's another one, Kafka, something to the effect of God gives the nut, but he doesn't crack it. Right? So again, it's like we're given all of this opportunity, we're given this circumstance, and we're also, let's face it, Will, we're handed some wounds. We're
Uh-huh.
handed some problems. We're handed some things to overcome adversity, right? But if we just succumb, that's the absence of ownership. And uh, let's face it. And let me ask you, do you work with anyone who is chronically in a victim mindset that just feels as if they're a victim of their circumstance and they have no agency? Do you work with anyone in that category who fits that description who is satisfied with their life in any material way?
The answer is yes. And
Okay. I'm quite
everyone,
surprised by that answer, but go on.
yeah, yes. It's a matter of how much each person, because I believe that everybody has a touch of victim mentality in them
Of
throughout the
course.
day or throughout their life. It's a matter of how much of the pie, you want to let
Right.
it be. Is it a sliver of the pie or is it 7/8 of the pie? Is it
Sure.
most of the pizza? You know, yeah, without a doubt, there are people who feel whether that be because of, well, corporate did another restructuring. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen people be literally like small t trauma of just like, I was working on this project and then they scrapped it, or
Mm.
our division just got absorbed into another division, or they just did layoffs and I lost my boss who's been here for whatever years. And all these little kind of micro micro traumas make people kind of have this sort of victim mentality of like, I'm not in control. Like, I'm just
Right.
waiting to be told when I get to go eat next. Going back to like
Mm.
the Shawshank Redemption prisoner mindset is like, I'm just waiting for my next meal and then I go to bed and I rinse and repeat. And a lot of times, and that's just kind of picking on the corporate environment.
Sure, there's exceptions to every rule, and there are some folks who find, I think, a muted sense of satisfaction in an environment where, I'm thinking about my dog, for example. My dog seems to be like the happiest animal of all time. But let's face it, he doesn't have a whole lot of freedom.
No.
Twice a day, some kibble is put in a bowl and he gets to eat. If I forget to put water in his bowl, he does not drink. And anytime he needs to hit the head or go out, use the bathroom, like unless he has an accident on my floor, of course, he relies on me to take him out. Right. But he's thoroughly contented. That tail is wagging at all times. So I think there is a piece that can be found, and obviously we're more sophisticated than dogs. There's a piece that could be found
Slightly.
within the confines of something that keeps us comfortable, keeps things predictable, right? But while there might be, as I said, a muted sense of satisfaction and happiness, I don't think a static state of being is one that is effective for engendering a long-term sense of satisfaction in a person's life.
No, 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 no. Comfort is, well, I mean, this always goes back to the same stuff we talk about all the time, right? Law of nature. If you're not growing, you're dying. Okay.
Right.
That's actually a law of nature. If somebody wants to challenge me, go find me a plant or any living thing that if it's literally
Sure.
not growing, it's entering into its dying phase, one or the other. And now I'm going to give you a little shout out. Tell me about growth and stress.
Growth is only stress is a necessary ingredient for growth. The 5 principles of mental health. And the 4th
Right.
principle is there's no stage of growth that's characterized by comfort. And yeah,
That's
get
what
it.
I'm getting at, that ultimately ownership can be uncomfortable. I think it's
Mhm.
actually a path to freedom. I really do. There's going to be growing pains that come with it. You know me, I think everything is 2 sides of the same coin, and now I actually finally get to hold up a, well, this is
Yes.
not a coin, it's just a
It's a
coaster.
coach.
I do this with clients all day long, which is so funny. And I say that there's this deep, human yearning for responsibility. We actually want to know that someone's responsible for things. And on one side of the coin is blame. Great.
Mm,
Someone else is responsible. That defends the ego. It protects you. It feels good. It's easy. It really
yeah.
is. Over the long term, I do think it could be destructive if you do too much of it because then you're in a constant victim loop. Because there are some times where you were victimized. Like, it's okay to blame others sometimes. But on the other side of the coin, not that far away, is ownership. Ownership, you can toggle between the two or find a 50-50 blend of like,
Somewhere in the
all
middle.
right, somewhere, great, this bad thing happened to you, or your boss is a jerk, or your team's incompetent. What if you could just give me 5% ownership
Mhm.
going forward? Now, this is kind of getting into your world, a little CBT kind of stuff of like, what would it feel like to have just a little bit of agency? What
Yeah.
would you do? What would he do? Give me
Right.
some advice.
Right, right. No, that's good, and I think, and one of the things that I try to do in sessions with clients is, all right, let's just assume 99%, as you said, of this issue is the responsibility, let's just say, of your spouse, right? Let's just
Yeah.
use that as an example. Tell me about that 1%, and then, again, alluding to what you mentioned before, it's like sort of turning the tables. If I was in this predicament, what would your advice to me be? What would your advice to a friend be, right? And that's sort of again, this idea of outsourcing responsibility and outsourcing advice in a way, because people are very poor at taking advice, but they're very good at giving advice, right? And so if you can channel that and give them the opportunity to pretend they were giving advice to a friend or a sibling or whatever it might be, it sort of cultivates this self-awareness because now it's like, oh, wait a minute, this is how I would tell my brother to respond
Uh-huh.
to his wife. So maybe I should take my own advice and, take some ownership over this marital crisis that we might be in, you know?
I did it yesterday where I was like, okay, can you be my coach for a moment? And then I
Yeah.
kind of did like the exact same scenario they were going through, but I just changed the story by this much.
Mhm.
And then they gave me the advice that they needed to hear themselves. And again, because I don't want to be the person to say it, right? Like I'm in the business of empowering people and inspiring them to know the truth, which is the answers lie within them, right? They're
Mhm.
greater and wiser and stronger than they thought they were, right? I'm not going to lift the weights for you.
Right.
Again, going back to this concept of ownership, right? If you want to score a touchdown, and I always use that as a metaphor of like your goals, your visions, your dreams of the future, you have to run down the thing, holding the ball, right? Like I'll
Right.
block for you and I'll, encourage you a little bit, but like
But you're
ultimately
gonna have to carry the ball.
you have to carry the ball. You have to own it. And then one last thing that I will say too is that ownership can go too far. I think that we can tilt too far
Sure.
where you see people, self-attacking themselves regarding, well, I should have known better, or I should
Mhm.
have this, or, that kind of buck stops here, radical ownership, extreme ownership philosophy, which I do like. But at the same time, it's sort of like, all right, you can't control everything.
Yeah.
And
Well, listen.
sometimes people can just be jerks to you and it is their fault a little.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, like all virtues, at a certain measure, they become vices, and I think what we're kind of venturing into the territory of is this space where it's almost like an OCD ish kind
Yeah.
of thing. I think OCD, the fundamental belief or the core belief of someone who suffers from OCD is something like, I have complete control, my actions have complete control over every single outcome. It's the person who, they have to brush their teeth in a certain way, or else, the New York Knicks don't win the NBA finals, right?
Superstition.
I can't believe I just said that out loud.
This is
My
just
little
superstition
OCD
now.
Yeah, it's something like magical thinking, but listen, over-identifying with responsibility for outcomes is magical thinking, right? Where I have a belief that every way in which I was treated as a child is my responsibility. There's nothing practical about that.
I invite them to make their world really small and to not try to
Mhm.
own every aspect of their life, but to choose. And again, I like to think about it as like different arms or different limbs or different parts of, your existence on this planet, where you and I, we both, of course, we are obsessed with the mind, right? Thoughts and beliefs and
Sure.
stories we tell ourselves. So how am I owning my mind? That's one. How am I owning my emotions? That's two. Again, instead of being knee jerk, can I actually take a moment to kind of consciously respond? How am I owning my body? I talk about going to the gym. It's like, how is it that some people are able to work out and others? I mean, the floor is right there. Everyone can do push-ups. It's your body. Okay. Are you owning it? How about your time? Are you owning your time? Again, this is all going back to self-awareness and consciousness that you talked about earlier. How about your relationships? Are you feeding them? Are you ignoring them? How are you owning your relationships? How are you owning your work? How are you owning the environment around you, the people you spend your time with? And then last but not least, my favorite one is, how are you going to own your legacy? And that doesn't mean that you have to have buildings with your name on it, but there is aspects of this life that will transcend you. And if you start consciously thinking about how do you want to own your legacy, like literally like what people would say about you and your children and your
Right.
community and how you left this campsite hopefully cleaner than you found it. I think that's continuously just a great exercise in how can I own things more.
Yeah. It's a great way to put a bow on it, Will.
Sounds
Good
good to
work,
me.
brother.
Good
Always
to
good to
see you,
see you, my
buddy.
man.
Until
Be
next
well,
time,
brother.
buddy. What's on Your Mind is a production of OYL Media. Subscribe for more reflections, blogs, and podcasts at OYLmedia.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.